Hello everyone, welcome to NETLORE episode 12. We're back again. See, I wasn't lying, I was telling the truth. There would be more episodes. We are back. NETLORE bros, we're back! And today, it's another very stupid premise, but it's one of those ones where it's so stupid I couldn't help but find it delightful, and I agreed. I agreed to let Bernie indulge with this. This is definitely NETLORE. I mean, some of the episodes we have, it's a little nebulous. Was this really NETLORE? Not that that even matters. It's our freaking podcast. We talk about whatever the crap we want on it. But this is definitely some NETLORE. We're going to be rehashing a 2-decade-old internet feud. I don't know why I'm being coy. You can read this title of the video, but I'll let Bernie give us a true intro to this episode proper.
Everyone I've told this premise to has laughed in my face, which is how I know it's a good episode idea. In the early 2000s, the internet had a much more diverse ecosystem. It was possible back then for some guy to just start a website and get millions of daily readers. Those who accomplished this feat became some of the internet's earliest celebrities, including the two figures we'll be discussing today named Lowtax and Maddox. Lowtax, or Richard Kiyonka, is the creator of Something Awful, which, to be honest, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably should already have watched the documentary we've made.
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, obviously, I'm empathetic to the Zoomers. You're like, who the fuck are these two old-ass motherfuckers? I don't know about them. But if you're listening to this podcast in particular, you have no excuse to not know who fucking Lowtax is. We made a whole video on this guy, and the first episode of the pod's about him. So you should know who Lowtax is. But for posterity, we will be introing him as, properly. The creator of somethingawful.com and an internet humorist of the era.
Yeah, he created the site to share his own satirical writings, and it later expanded to have its own form, which quickly took a life of its own and kind of became this cultural frontier of the whole internet, like this life and blood of it, where all of these different memes and things were just kind of spawning from it, not because of him, but under his control.
Not to not give Lowtax his damn due credit, which we have certainly done over the years, but, it was a community thing that sort of made Something Awful blossom into the epicenter of culture it was. And again, having forums was a big deal, I mean, even when they were pay-to-play forums, I guess, this is the stupid term I guess you could use.
Maddox is the creator of the best page in the universe. He similarly began with satirical writing, but stuck with it, receiving mainstream attention, appearing on television, and even getting several book deals. For one reason or another, both men would end up in the forefront of the online counterculture, often sharing a very similar audience. Well, similarity breeds contempt, and they would end up having a rivalry that spanned over 20 years. This is the story of Lowtax versus Maddox, and the feud between two of the internet's most influential satirists.
Right, so yeah, this is what I was sort of getting at, if you don't necessarily know who these guys are, I don't blame you, but if you were around on the internet during this time, they were kind of a big deal. Like, Maddox, I don't know if you call him the first e-celeb, but he was one of the first guys where I feel like everyone on the internet back then knew who he was. They read his site. He was really kind of a big fucking deal back in the day.
Back in the 90s, right?
Yeah, I guess the late 90s, but really the early 2000s, the first half of that decade is personally when I specifically was aware of him and read his site. And I was a fan of Maddox back in the day. I bought his book, The Alphabet of Manliness. I even met him at a book signing back in 2005 and everything. So
how'd you get into him?
Everyone back on any site you knew, I was posting on GameFAQs and shit back in the day, back in 2001. And yeah, people just knew about Maddox. A new article had come out, people had posted, and we talked about it. It was just this is not to diminish him at all, but we were sort of talking about this last time. There were just a lot less people on the internet back then. So, I mean, that site was a big deal. And obviously it sort of fell off in just in the sense that people don't go to sites anymore. Maddox now has a presence on YouTube and social media and all that shit. The amount of people who just had best page in the universe bookmarked at one point. If that was a statistic you could view, it would have been a huge fucking percent. At least of the fucking people on the internet that I knew back in the day.
What was the first article you remember from Maddox, the earliest ones?
I remember it was all about his fucking persona and whatever. It was before even about making fun of kids' drawings. I remember he would include little MS Paint drawings in his articles, and they were very crude, but that kind of appealed to me in a way. But yeah, this will become a point of contention we'll talk about later, but he had some famous articles where he made fun of shitty kids' drawings, and those were very popular. Those were probably some of the more viral ones they went back in the day, but there was a lot of good stuff on that site. I remember really enjoying it. It was very emblematic of the culture of the era, you know what I mean?
What was the persona? He was a pirate.
I don't even know how quaint or whatever this would seem to modern it, but this was during the peak of, pirates versus ninjas or whatever. I don't know if this is even still listed stuff, but there were web rings or whatever that Maddox would link to, and there was one about, real ultimate power being a ninja, and I remember I bought that fucking book too. That website made a book about just some
the Pirates versus Ninjas book? What is that?
No, that book was all about being a fucking ninja, but that was just a cultural meme thing people would do, who do you think was cooler, pirates or ninjas or whatever, and obviously seriously. I mean, if you're playing into the whole manliness, big buff guy, you know, whatever persona, pirate definitely makes more sense. I'll give you that. And, you know, I have to say, pirates definitely won that cultural zeitgeist for a while with the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, but I'm not sure. Comments, who's more epic, pirates versus ninjas? We gotta settle this in 2024, right?
I'm gonna be honest, I did not really know this is like a whole like thing.
This was a whole thing. I'm telling you. I mean, you know, the kind of shit people used to love. I mean, this is 10 plus years later. That same kind of people were like, does the epic narwhal bacon at midnight or whatever? It's like that kind of style of, you know, humor or whatever.
With how popular both sites were, it felt inevitable they would reference each other. The first time Maddox was acknowledged by SA is an article from May of 2004. He was mockingly referred to as a great mind and described as a self-aggrandizing internet humorist. This implied some kind of grudge, which wasn't made public until a month later.
Right. I'm not even remotely... I didn't know about this, like, off the top of my head. I'm not surprised one of the writers eventually would take a shot at Maddox just because, like, first of all, he was a huge popular guy. It wouldn't be too hard to, like, do a parody of his writing style or whatever, you know what I mean? It's fertile ground for parody or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like from this, you wouldn't necessarily know if there's any kind of like actual bad blood or whatever, but this was the start of something. We'll get to that.
So the story really begins with a thread on Something Awful dated June 17th, 2004. That day, a person named Jordan asked if anybody liked Maddox. While he was trying to make fun of a copycat, people just quickly started criticizing Maddox. And they started making fun of like his persona, his style, and, you know, his even just writing abilities in pretty snarky and dismissive ways.
Right. I'm not even remotely surprised, you know, like I said, people love to hate on what's popular. It is funny that thread actually started with someone was just asking about Tubis, which is like ancient. If you remember that, you are an old freak. His whole thing was he's basically just ripping off Maddox. And I remember people getting mad at him because he used to have a bunch of stupid opinions. But it is one of those things where in retrospect, it was like, oh yeah, this is obviously like just a parody. It's not like he's really trying to rip him off or whatever. But yeah, I'm not surprised people quickly started talking about why they did or didn't like Maddox or whatever.
Yeah, someone said he should be shot in the head and everyone that likes him should be shot or mutilated, depending on how much they enjoy his inane drivel.
Again, this was like a philosophy of Something Awful. It's just like, you don't take the internet seriously, you idiot. The internet's not real, you dumb moron. You can say whatever you want. You can fucking say anyone should be shot in the head for liking a comedy thing. I mean, come on, I say stupid shit like that. But it is funny when you just lay it out like that deranged that people would just say shit like that. People didn't give a fuck.
Now, among those critics were actually several writers for the front page, and they commented on rumors that he may have stolen one of their articles. This thread quickly racked up 5 pages, which is when Maddox joined to defend himself. And he writes, "Someone emailed this thread to me and I couldn't believe some of the shit I was reading. I mean, do you even read this shit before hitting post?" He called out several specific users for insulting his work and then started criticizing Something Awful itself before calling LOWTAX a brilliant businessman. He was basically like complimenting him in a half-hearted way.
Again, if you're just listening to this, because of course this is an audio podcast, you're well within your right to just listen to it and not have to be staring at visual elements. But we're going to show a quick screenshot on the screen of just the size of Maddox's post in this thread was like, you don't make posts like this anymore. Nobody just effort posts an entire fucking essay. They might make a couple tweets about it or something, but like, this was the degree people's minds were operating on.
I just threw it into a word counter and this post is 2,633 words.
If you want to read the whole thing at your leisure, feel free, but we'll cover the highlights for you. Don't worry. Stay tuned, folks.
Yeah, so here's the first, I think this is the only excerpt from it. I only have one excerpt from it. "I have to admit that charging people to join forums, then charging them for all sorts of frivolous bullshit like changing your title, and then looting the forums for brilliant Photoshop submissions that get hijacked with Something Awful's insignia, and then posting the submissions on the main site to produce more content to generate even more ad revenue with every click is very, very clever." This was all to set up his main point, that Something Awful had ripped him off and not the other way around. You see, back in 2002, Maddox wrote an article making fun of children's artwork. It quickly became one of his earliest viral hits and like apparently started getting reprinted in like a ton of different mediums. Like he claims that it was being reprinted in like newspapers and fucking magazines and shit beyond like just email chains.
Yeah, this is, again, people did not give a fuck about credit back in the day. I mean, they still don't, but like even back in the day, people would just repost shit. I believe him. I'm certainly not surprised if that happened.
Well, 6 months later, Livestock started a similar series of articles on Something Awful, and he published the first one in 2003 before putting out a second and third one like a few months later. They got enough attention that although they weren't super popular, you know, Maddox got aware of it, and he actually was like pretty taken aback by it because apparently he was a frequent front page reader. He ended up emailing LOWTAX over these concerns of plagiarism. You know, he thought that maybe Livestock had stolen the idea from his article.
Just skimming them, I have to say, like, first of all, obviously anyone can come up with the idea of making fun of children's artwork, but like, he's very clearly doing Maddox's shtick here. It's not even...
Oh, so you actually think it is a ripoff?
Oh, yeah. Certainly taking inspiration from, I mean, it's kind of a simple shtick, you call it shitty, you give it an F, you move on. It's funny, but it's like, I don't know.
LOWTAX called this assertion the most thing he'd read in months. He argued their articles came out first, which isn't true, okay? I checked the archives. That is not true, okay?
What the fucking LOWTAX?
Before suggesting they'd been plagiarized. Maddox apologized anyways, only for LOWTAX to never respond.
That's the LOWTAX Sigma male move, for you to just rip someone off. It wasn't literally him, but then just deny it, say, no, you ripped us off, and they apologize, and you just ignore them.
Now, something he acknowledges in the post is that it could have easily been a coincidence. There was a similar concept predating either version from 2001. And if you actually look at this article, this is from Rotten's The Gaping Maw, and this is October from 2001.
There is another little children art criticism corner. They're not all Fs, but it's, making fun of children's art. Like I said, you could certainly have two people parallel thought that, but it's interesting. It's interesting to see one from earlier.
The post ends with Maddox admitting he was still a fan and would likely continue using the site. So he wasn't even really that upset, I think, in this post.
Yeah, no, Maddox wrote a really long post, but it's not like he's crying. He's just laying out his grievances and,
He is malding, but...
I mean, he did totally fucking call LOWTAX out for the whole business model of just attracting people with the Photoshop Fridays and shit, but I don't know. It was what it was.
4 hours later, LOWTAX replied, wow, that's a lot of words about the internet. He defended his writers, calling Maddox a that took the internet too seriously.
He's a for thinking it's some massive popularity or e-penis contest where nothing matters but hits and how well you're accepted by 60-year-old chain forwarding secretaries. Who gives a fuck about what somebody thinks on the internet? That's who. Thank you, Richard. But no, I just want to highlight really quick, this is the exact, dichotomy you'll still see to this day. The dichotomy between the two archetypes of the forum poster, the Maddoxes who will type a massive fucking essay laying all their grievances out versus the LOWTAX who post the one sentence LOL, that's a lot of words.
Yeah,
you care so much, that's a care fail. But what gets me is that, they both cared about the freaking argument. They were both equally butt mad and it's just the LOWTAX was pretending not to care, and that's what kind of rubbed me the wrong way.
He was just coping.
Because if he didn't actually care, he wouldn't have been responding as much. And I mean,
we made fun of Maddox's big post. Look at how many replies.
Yeah, Maddox posted in the thread one time, and LOWTAX ended up replying way, way, way more than that.
So he clearly took it very personally, and we have a few more quotes.
Oh, great. Yes, giving me more lovely LOWTAX quotes to read. Thanks. Oh, poor little Maddox. His entire internet world is crumbling down upon him. First, he declares his website is tremendously more popular than SA, and he is shot down. Then he bitches at me because we run a business here, and according to him, it's against the lofty, high moral internet standards to accept donations or payments for a website. And it turns out he asked for donations on his own page. Of course, his own clever little way, 694-point bold font, gray text on a black background. You're a Maddox.
He joked about hiring Maddox for the front page while insulting his website.
Again, it's the amount of posts LOWTAX made. Again, these were not all responses. These were sequential posts he's making to other posters in the thread, just reiterating how fucking not mad he was. We'd probably have to start a special hosted site section for him. Painfully and excruciatingly minute aspects of life that really piss me the fuck off. I'll have to hire some NASA engineers to redesign our page to support his 70,000 point font text, and probably an eye doctor to handle the tech support calls from readers who lose their eyesight after trying to wade through one of his hilarious updates. But since I'm an evil capitalistic businessman, I can afford it.
Why was he so mad?
Maddox is like a younger, egomaniacal Andy Rooney, only without the cutting-edge social commentary. He's absolutely seething about this fucking...
Nevertheless, Maddox retaliated 2 weeks later with a parody of Something Awful's front page. He left and just worked on his own.
Instead of making a fucking post trying to own him, he literally went and he made an entire parody of the... I mean, this is the kind of high effort... I wouldn't say shit posters, it's not even almost accurate, but you say what you want, he was definitely a satirist, he was definitely satirizing Something Awful. This is funny, though, that they were still, one of the things they feud about, like I sometimes mention, is the concept of trying to make money online was seen as so verboten back in the day. One of the jokes on this page, he's making fun of Rich for having fucking banner ads, and that was such a big point of pride for him back in the day, was not having banner ads on his site, which was cool, obviously, but...
Click on the byline, the make a donation.
Oh, okay. Good bit, Maddox. Yeah, it leads directly to a quote of LOWTAX saying, I don't solicit donations because it goes against the entire principle of the internet that sites like mine should be free for everyone to view and read. You're trying to own him with quotes from a few years back, like, just look at this fucking hypocrite. This was back in the internet back in the day. You would own people with facts and logic and hypocrisy. It was like Phoenix Wright. You think you could own someone by pointing out a contradiction in their logic, like that would actually do anything. But no, it's a funny page. He spoofs him for the fucking mangosteen thing. And it's I'm not gonna read all this, but like it's a pretty accurate, send up of the over-reliance on the word fat and gay, as was the style at the time.
And he got really mad that LOWTAX used the word e-penis.
Oh, yeah, he got mad specifically at e-penis. Of course, yeah. Because that was LOWTAX's defense. It's like, Maddox just cares about his e-penis.
Let's see if I can't use the word e-penis 40 times in one post. And then the first line is greetings. Wow.
No, it was a good send-up. It was a good spoof of something awful, I gotta say. This was before I had even had an account, so I wasn't really specifically essay aligned yet, and I still remember this going on. Yeah, if anything, I was definitely more on Team Maddox at the time.
Oh, okay. So you remember this, and
I don't know why this is such a stupid thing, but I used to just love when sites would do spoofs of each other like this and just random crap. Like, for some reason that just really stuck out in my mind because it seemed like a high effort bit to do all this, like, because you mean just the ads on all the sides and stuff. I mean, obviously most of the links they redirect back to the main page, but
there is if you click on Comedy Goldmine, that's the other big page that he has on here. I think this is the only other page.
Right.
This page, attributed to LOWTAX, satirizes a section called Comedy Goldmine. That was a part of Something Awful where they would take content and memes from the forum and just share them, publicly.
Yeah, it's a curated crap.
Maddox criticized them for monetizing and taking credit for user-generated content. The other article, written by LOWTAX, references his use of e-penis and it ends with a lampooning of his catchphrase and guiding philosophy, the internet makes you stupid.
It really does, though. You gotta give him credit for that. He called that one.
I can read this one off. This is technically Maddox, okay? It's not actually LOWTAX. So that's the end of another groundbreaking Something Awful post by yours truly. Until next time, I'm off to ban people in my forums for minor infractions against arbitrary forum rules that may upset my delicate feelings. Just remember, e-penis, tired simile, and the internet makes you stupid. The clear implication being, of course, that stupid people wouldn't exist if it were not for the internet, and nothing on the internet matters because it's the internet. Duh. I mean, nothing on the internet matters until you point out that I make my living off the internet, of course, but other than that, it doesn't matter. And if you disagree, that makes you a homosexual.
It's true. That's exactly what Rich sounded like. No, he got his ass. That was a good get.
Maddox returned to the forum on the 4th of July to share his parody. The thread was flooded with goons calling him unfunny. LOWTAX responded within minutes. He was initially dismissive, claiming he didn't care what people said about him on the internet. When users defended the parody, he acknowledged the points were true, but it reeked of butthurt. Eventually, LOWTAX decided to ban Maddox under the guise of trolling. And that was after, by the way, explicitly stating he wouldn't.
I was going to say, his second post in that thread says, I'm not going to ban him. The guy always takes the internet very seriously, and I'm afraid banning his account would send him over the deep edge, which is funny. So I'm not going to ban him, post like 20 more times, then bans him.
Maddox didn't even reply.
He especially fucking banned Maddox. I don't know, usually get banned on Something Awful, it's links to a specific post and then it shows up in your rap sheet. He's banned with nothing listed. So I think LOWTAX literally specifically went into the site code to ban him.
You can't even look at his posts. It glitches out.
Right. They might just be archived, but either way, the ban is fucked up, and it's very funny. You can tell this definitely got under his skin a little bit. It was. I mean, of course, everyone is kissing LOWTAX's ass, saying that Maddox sucks because you did that or you got banned and you lost fucking $10 or whatever. God, I actually recognize some of the fucking usernames here. This is crazy, but yeah.
Did you read this thread? Do you remember this happening?
I don't remember this thread specifically, no, but I would have thought he would have just banned Maddox originally for that big effort post, but that would have made him look like he cares too much, but he still couldn't resist doing it.
He just got owned so hard he banned him.
Well, that's what LOWTAX did. If you pissed him off, he would ban you, and that's why it was you couldn't really talk shit about him.
The decision sparked a backlash, which led him to try to justify his actions.
If people want to point out things that are wrong with the site, let them do it. Oh, maybe on their own forums, not on the forums they're bitching about. Come on, face it. The guy posted here to try and get our attention and piss us off. Are you honestly claiming that he spent days creating that inaccurate parody so he could helpfully give us advice on how to run essay? He did it to get some kind of internet revenge, and 90% of the stuff he bitched about on his parody don't even make any sense or apply to anything.
It's so, just transparently seething.
That is some cope. That is some seething.
The feud was discussed on a number of forums, which... It's kind of funny looking back at these, just 2004 Newgrounds thread.
People on fucking Newgrounds were talking about this, the guy in fucking Matrix, dude, Morpheus is fighting Neo. It's Maddox versus Something Awful.
who debated over which of the satirists came out on top. The public largely sided with Maddox, although SA continued to mock him for years. So there's a lot of articles that reference Maddox, like this one right here from 2004. I spent a lot of time on my last couple updates instead of just copying pasting the latest Maddox rant about his overpriced socks.
Yeah, I'm sure this has laid the seeds for bad blood that existed for years and years. That's sort of what I was getting at when I was saying earlier, like this sort of bubbled over and then they didn't like each other, but I'm not sure how much more effort they're going to take other than shit-talking each other on their own respective sites.
In 2007, they ridiculed his fan page in an article titled Torrent Sites, Japan Forum, and the Best Fan Page in the Universe, where they mocked it for its poor moderation and a lot of open, roleplay, furry roleplay, and people talking about cutting holes into plush toys. And
oh, that was the bread and butter back in the day, was just finding furries and weirdos on forums and then making articles, making fun of them. That's what fueled the content machine on Something Awful back in the 2000s.
So the fallout was covered on Encyclopedia Dramatica, of all sites, with the forum apparently shutting down shortly after. He was also added to the Something Awfulpedia, which compiled his long-standing feud with the site, which is pretty interesting to look at kind of people's just random thoughts on Maddox.
People were in 2005 being like, Maddox is falling off. They were already that eager to be shit-talking. That's funny.
A lot of people here hate Maddox and don't find him funny, part of what makes threads about him fucking train wrecks, but I think that those of us who do find him at least usually funny still in general agree that he takes the internet far too seriously, and he has a downright illogical hatred for profiting from the internet. These are talking points fed from Lowtax, okay?
It is interesting seeing those specific issues getting rehashed.
Which was his main point against Lowtax, that he charged for his part of the internet instead of giving it away in an incredibly snooty manner like Maddox does, and looked like a fool in his short-lived time on Something Awful.
This is like the narrative they're writing in the Russian textbooks about the revolution, you know what I mean? It's just heavily curated.
The propaganda you were taught.
I never hated Maddox, I never had anything against him, but it was when I was on SA, there was definitely sort of that vibe where it was I don't know, you wouldn't be posting about how much you loved Maddox now, whenever a new Maddox article came out or whatever. Not on SA the way we would back on GameFAQs, at least, that's what I'll say.
Did anyone ever get banned for being a Maddox fan? Probably not, right?
I don't remember ever seeing something like that, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if you came into a thread talking about how much you love Maddox. Lowtax probably wouldn't ban you, probably just quote you, call you or something.
This is where it pretty much sat for the next decade, okay? So there were no significant developments for over 10 years, and, why should there have been, right? It's not really that big of a deal. It's not that important of an argument. The entire internet kind of changed around them. Their lives took completely different trajectories. Maddox published several books, including one based on that same concept, actually, in 2011, I think.
The children's art one. I never read that one, but that is funny that, yeah, he ended up making that into its own actual book.
And he ended up, he's working in television. He actually has a show coming out now, which is crazy. I think it was made by Shadow Machine. It's based on the Alphabet of Manliness.
Yeah, the Encyclopedia of Manliness, right?
As you know, Lowtax got married twice, had children, all while living off the forum, and yet, due to a very specific series of events, they somehow ended up crossing paths again. In 2014, Maddox launched a weekly podcast called The Biggest Problem in the Universe. It was co-hosted by fellow comedian and frequent collaborator Dick Masterson. The show lasted 107 episodes until its abrupt end in 2016. This subject is pretty complicated because they have differing narratives for why the podcast ended. Maddox says it ended because Dick was unreliable and difficult to work with. Dick says it ended because he slept with Maddox's ex-girlfriend. Whatever the case may be, they were no longer friends. They antagonized each other publicly, with Dick starting his own successor show called The Dick Show. Their feud would quickly become one of his main sources of content. And that's where we finally kind of get back to Something Awful. Lowtax was invited as a guest back in 2017. He didn't know much about the show other than their shared hatred of Maddox. And you can see, he actually made a thread on Something Awful called, "What is the Dick Show Podcast and what should I ask or say on it?"
I was invited to speak on it this weekend, and I tried listening to one episode, and it just seemed like a bunch of typical MRA, red pill, semi-alt-right stuff, so I stopped listening to it. Apparently Asterios is a friend of the Dick guy, and he says it's an act or something, but I don't know if I buy that. Even though Asterios is annoyingly liberal at times, all I think I know is that they hate Maddox, and I'm cool with that. Can anyone who listens to the show explain it to me and to catch me up? That's very funny, actually, that he literally just went on to shit-talk Maddox. Dick was just desperate for anyone, whoever had a beef with Maddox, and he found fucking Lowtax, of all people.
Rich was friends with Asterios Kokkinos, a front-page writer that used to appear on Biggest Problem. Asterios was in the middle of their feud for continuing to associate with Dick and appear on both of their shows. Lowtax's episode was posted on March 14th, with Rich laughing at Maddox before explaining their decade-long feud.
The reason I asked if you were recording is because before we got into anything, I just wanted to say one thing in advance. Is you worked with Maddox.
Hey, shithead, I don't really appreciate that. Yeah, you're right. Okay. You're the only one to call it out.
Yeah. Oh, I just needed to get that off my chest. Okay.
Feel better?
Yeah.
I don't.
Dude, you worked with Schmorky, man. It's like
this was 20 what? Oh, I guess this was actually post Schmorky being so whatever. That's a whole separate thing. But yeah, is LOWTAX really the one to be talking about odd associations? But
well, they had back in the day, I think it will, let me know if I'm not summing it up correctly, but Maddox accused you guys of stealing his making fun of kids drawings idea.
It was autism at its finest. Because Livestock, Josh Boroff, would review kids' art in a serious way because, a lot of the comedy at that time, came from trying to analyze something in a critical way that does not deserve critical analysis.
Yeah.
And we had to feature those. And then Maddox, I guess, was brainstorming, said, hey, since I'm the smartest guy in the universe and the funniest God's gift to man, women, and children, I'm going to make fun of kids' art. And they started doing it. And then he saw our articles and he just got furious and sent emails saying, I demand you take this down and give me credit for the original idea of making fun of children's art.
Really?
And you're a bunch of hack frauds and I am the original creator. And then we just replied, look at the dates.
You fucking idiot.
You. And then he didn't respond.
He does think that he invented making fun of kids. As many soliloquies of how great he is, I've heard privately. I asked him, what about Joan Rivers ripping on kids in her stand-up 50 years ago? And he's like, well, it's different on the internet.
Just want to point out, Maddox's post after that points out there was an article that predated both of them, and it could have been coincidence.
Yeah, no, Rich definitely seems a little defensive about that whole date thing, even though it was
it's not even his article. He didn't even write it. But, he had an enjoyable enough time that he returned several times after. His third appearance on The Dick Show was on July 18th. The same day, he called out Maddox on Twitter. And you want to read these back and forths?
Okay, sure, yeah. Well, let's go through this Twitter thread. I'll do LOWTAX. July 18th, 2017, LOWTAX tweets, hey, at Maddox rules. The things you say and think are all dumb, without exception. You are a bald toilet.
Sorry, who are you again?
I'm one of the many, many people fortunate enough to have never written this. Then it's just a quote from his fucking page.
Yeah, he has a quote from the page. I could not find what article this is from. I don't know if it's still up anymore. It's like an excerpt Maddox wrote about girls who say they like guys with a sense of humor. Just for context of what he's pointing out. Still not sure who you are. Are you the guy I offered help after his servers got flooded in Hurricane Katrina?
That's really funny, and that's a funny piece of lore that I wasn't even aware of. But, there was a huge deal back in the day when Hurricane Katrina happened on something awful, and, they tried to, raise money, and their shit got locked by PayPal. There was all this drama, but, that's really funny if, behind the scenes, Maddox was still trying to reach out. Maddox said that, and then Rich replied, no, you're the guy who claimed he patented making fun of children and threatened us until it was revealed we did it before you ever did.
Yeah, then Maddox posted the screenshot. So this is all the way back September 4th, 2005. This is a crazy screenshot, first of all, just to look at, but hey man, pretty shitty to hear about your servers. Anyways, if you need help, temporary hosting or anything like that, let me know. We've had our differences in the past, but I want to leave all that stupid bullshit behind now. I know you have a family and your livelihood is at stake, so consider this a genuine offer.
It didn't end up happening, but the fact that Maddox offered and it was literally I'm trying to put that bullshit behind us. And then 12 years after this, LOWTAX is just out of the blue, just tweeting at Maddox fuck you, you're an idiot. What an asshole, man.
And then he says, glad you've moved on 12 years later.
You should move on from being a bald toilet man.
Thanks, guy.
It's just some advice. You don't have to. Maybe you like being a bald toilet man. I don't know. It is funny when you see Rich trying to be funny on Twitter, and it's like, it's different when he doesn't have a million sycophants on the board sucking his dick.
It's like bizarre, first of all, because it's like their back and forth like really did not change that much. And like
they're still getting mad about the fucking children's fucking drawing shit 15 fucking years, like, goddamn after the fact. It's crazy.
Like, I don't know, not to glaze Maddox, but like, Lowtax just lying. Like, he's just like, it's not true.
He's still on this shit. Like, we did it first, when it's like, they did not do it first. And Maddox even points out, like, someone did it before them. So it's like, why is he still on that?
It's also worth pointing out, Maddox tried to get Lowtax in touch with publishers after, like, their back and forth where he apologized. He actually, like, offered to get him in touch with some of the publishers he was talking to at the time. So, like,
right, this was one of the things Maddox brought up in his big initial post in that thread before he made the parody page, where he was like, even back then, he was trying to, like, smooth things over with Lowtax. He wasn't trying to have a fucking feud about this shit. He was like, okay, whatever, you know. It doesn't even matter who came up with it first or whatever, but, you know.
Regardless, you know, for unknown reasons, Rich just completely ignored the email. He ignored that this conversation happened and just kept calling him a bald toilet man over and over. And that's where it ends.
People have had this situation growing up or seen it a million times where someone has to get the last word in a conversation. Either of them can just, like, Lowtax has to make sure everyone knows how much he doesn't care.
Now, the rivalry between Dick and Maddox only escalated until Maddox filed a $20 million harassment lawsuit that November, which, you know, most people know as the LOL suit. It wasn't just against Dick, but several Patreon employees as well as Asterios Kokonos. This lawsuit was so unpopular that it led a lot of people who were unaware of the situation, or really even who either of them were, to become invested in Maddox's downfall. Rich was obviously immediately supportive, posting in a thread about the matter on Something Awful.
When I found out about his dumb lawsuit, I imagined that scene from The Simpsons where Lionel Hutz calls in all the witnesses and it's like this parade of non-stop people.
The first reply shows an edit Maddox made back in 2004. He then elaborated on his thoughts regarding Dick.
Anyway, Maddox is incredibly dense and lacks any ability to not take himself seriously. In his quest to show the world how tough and manly he is, he somehow managed to instead become a temperamental crybaby. I'm surprised I wasn't on his list of people to sue, since I called him a toilet man on Twitter, and that seemed to set him off. Dick is nice and I like him, but I do not particularly like his character and some of the dumb misogynistic stuff he says.
Rich's next appearance on The Dick Show was in June of 2018. He called in after what became Asterios' last appearance on the show. While all of Maddox's claims were dismissed in court, the lawsuit still had serious consequences. Asterios lost his job and ended up in a lot of debt. Dick previously considered funding a countersuit, but retracted the offer. This resulted in a pretty awkward conversation live on air that ended with the two slowly falling out. Rich called in to support Asterios while wondering where Maddox got his money from.
Yeah. Well, where did Maddox get the money from to do all this?
No idea. It's very.
Well, I'm here to help Asterios any way that I can. Like, you know, if I can, I don't generate much money, but I can, you know, pay him to write again.
Yeah.
With what little money I have, but
yeah.
You know, I know he's a good guy, and I stand by anything that he says, and I understand that, you know, the situation that he's in with Maddox and everything, that it shouldn't have happened. I understand his emotional response and everything, but the legal system's just fucked.
Sorry, I'm all out of sorts with this fucking Asterios nonsense. I'm very off about it. I feel very off after that conversation.
No, I mean, there's no, I feel bad for him because there's no real solution.
Yeah.
You know, there's no viable solution. And then if you're going to countersue or what, you know, he was talking about, that's like a huge money gamble.
Yeah, it is. Let's see, maybe
it's just basically people can, if you got the money, you know, you can ruin people.
Yeah.
That November, Asterios wrote an article for Something Awful. It was a tongue-in-cheek apology centered around a post Rich made about Maddox on Facebook. And you can see here why Maddox is not a bald, ugly toilet skeleton creature.
Still, it's so funny. So many years later, there's still essay articles about fucking Maddox. This fucking feud, this stupid feud that started over fucking nothing.
He once again relitigates the feud over children's artwork.
Oh yeah, look at this Facebook post. All right, great. The only funny thing Maddox ever did was accuse my side of stealing his idea of mocking children's drawings. Then I pointed out we actually did it first, way before him. So technically he was ripping us off. He instantly shut his stupid ass mouth after I pointed that out. Oh yeah, and his failed multi-million-dollar lawsuit against Asterios Kokkinos and 60 other people, which he apparently wrote himself in crayon, and was so poorly worded that the judge was incapable of even vaguely determining what he was attempting to communicate. Also, he looks like a bald, ugly toilet skeleton creature, which is pretty funny too, I guess. Again, he's still going with the narrative that like, I proved it came first, and Maddox instantly shut up, and he instantly got owned.
He doesn't even like mention the person who wrote the article. He just says my site. It was us. It's like, dude. After this, Rich's life started to fall apart with several accusations of abuse throughout 2020. He completely lost support from his community, having to sell the website entirely. The Dick Show was one of the few places that accepted him, showing up 3 more times before his suicide in November of 2021. His final appearance was posthumous, with the description eulogizing his death. Now you may think that surely this is where the feud ends, right? Where else could it go from here? Well, after years of silence, Maddox returned in 2023 to fire back at everyone who sided with Dick during the fallout. That included Justin Wang, with an hour-long video levying fairly out-of-touch plagiarism complaints. This video is mostly notable here for a joke referencing Lowtax.
As for why I'm finally talking about this, it's because I'm still dealing with the fallout from Asterios' smear campaign. He even published his false narrative on his friend Rich Kiyonka's website, better known as Lowtax. Lowtax's greatest hits include Something Awful and Women. And of course, Asterios even defended Lowtax in his hit piece against me. If Asterios hadn't carpet bombed the internet with so much bullshit, I probably wouldn't have had to make this video. And if he didn't threaten me, encourage people to review bomb my podcast, harass my sponsors, and publish a fraudulent ad to hurt my book sales, I wouldn't have had to take him to court.
The Dig got him some flack, to which he responded with an even more specific joke. He went out with a bang, I'll give him that. And that is how the feud ended, with Lowtax committing suicide and Maddox dancing on his grave.
Yeah, I mean, no matter which way you slice it, this was a Maddox W. Not that we really needed to dedicate another podcast about Rich being a fucking loser, but seriously, well, first of all, Maddox is still alive, so that's a big W there. And I think it's pretty clear that Rich comes off as a complete fucking asshole about the whole situation. Maddox tried like multiple times to like bury the hatchet. He's just got completely snubbed each time.
It's like bizarre. So it happens, he bans Maddox, and then like 10 years later, he sees like his enemy, like he has a podcast, so he just remembers
it. He sees a moment of weakness for Maddox. He's like, this is my chance to shit on him even more for that fucking shit from over a fucking decade ago.
That's the thing. He definitely doesn't actually care about like the original crime.
It's not about the crime. It's about the fact he doesn't like Maddox and saw an excuse to try and own him. That's literally the whole thing. It's so petty. That's what makes me laugh. It's like this whole situation is like this ultimate circle of just fucking pettiness that lasts over 20 years. And now it's just like, no one's gonna care or know about this except us. That's why we have to document it.
I think it was because he was coping because of the website. He like always lied and said, oh, that's where it ended.
He was wrong. I know. That was another aspect, another reason why Maddox got the W there, because he was right. He did it first, and even he was the one to admit that, like, well, you know, other people have done it too. Lowtax was saying that Maddox was saying that he was trying to patent making fun of kids, which he clearly wasn't, because he was open to admit that he didn't even do it first out of anyone in the world. You know what I mean?
You said reading through it, though, that it even kind of is clear that it's aping his style.
I literally skimmed it. I'm not saying for sure 100% that Something Awful writer ripped off Maddox, but it feels very odd to me that you would also coincidentally come up with this premise for a piece. Again, I believe it's possible, but I'm just saying.
Look, even if he did know about it, it's not that big of a deal.
All right, exactly. That's the other thing. Exactly. It's literally like Maddox himself would say he doesn't have a copyright or patent on the idea of making fun of kids' art, so it doesn't even matter. That's why the whole feud was over something that doesn't even fucking matter. And Maddox was willing to be like, let's put it behind us. It doesn't matter. And Lowtax was still butt mad about it fucking 20 years later.
What I love about this feud so much is that, 20 years later, it's just about the one thing. New things are not happening.
Yeah, the feud never even evolved beyond that. It was the same stupid fucking article for 20 years.
It's just all some stupid form drama.
Like I said, that's the point, though. It wasn't about the article. The article is just an excuse. He just didn't like Maddox.
Now, to actually refresh, myself on taking notes for this, I was looking through the old script for the Lowtax doc, and I actually found some of the old notes, and the Maddox arc is listed in one of these early like versions of the doc somewhere. So there,
right. I mean, that makes sense because you could just divide LOWTAX's life up into the eras of different people he was fucking feuding with or whatever. You know what I mean?
That was like the hard part though is I didn't know about the threads until like just randomly.
Yeah, the threads have a lot of context. It would be hard to sort of track this feud just based on Twitter and what the fucking Dick Show appearances or whatever.
We were in call when I found them. We were talking about how the perception changed because wasn't Maddox pretty faceless for a while?
Well, Maddox, it wasn't necessarily that he was faceless because his like icon, his avatar was like a edited version of his face, but he didn't have like a video presence for a really long time, I think.
Just like a handful of images, I guess.
Right. There are pictures of him from like the book signings and stuff, but it was just like that era of the internet where you could just be text on a page to people, you know what I mean? I mean, that was LOWTAX for a long time too. He didn't have a lot of video appearances beyond fucking Doomhouse, yeah.
Well, LOWTAX, see, well, he would always meet up with people, though. They always had GoonCon, which saying GoonCon now, like, sucks. he was at the very first GoonCon ever in recorded history, but...
Oh my god, yeah, that's the connotation of me telling people, oh yeah, I went to GoonCon back in 2005. It's a funny little story, right? The feud between these two guys. Like, again, maybe if you didn't know about either of those guys, this story is just like two idiots talking and you don't care or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But like...
There was a time where this was like the shit of like what people were talking about online, right? In terms of like internet celebrities, which is not much.
Anyone who's pretending like they can't understand why people would care about this are the same people who was like, oh, follow fucking drama alert. Mr. Beast is feuding with Flimsy Jimbo. It's like, come on, you know why people cared about this back in the day. This was the original E-Celeb feud.
Well, if it's also like what you were saying before, like it was a lot easier to get famous back then. So like there were a lot of working titles for this. They were very purposely like playing up how fucking stupid it's like, this is the battle of the early internet satirists. It's like, who cares, right? Like
that makes it sound so much more less like substantive. Like, and it just never died. Richwood just never let it die. He was just still pissed about this years later.
It only ended when he died.
I mean, I believe with all my heart, if Rich was still alive, he would probably randomly be making tweets about how he hates Maddox still because he just like he just thinking his brain was not capable of like growing and moving on from this shit.
Oh, geez, now I don't know how to end this one either.
I mean, but it was basically we covered the conclusion. The episode has been concluded. We gave Maddox the W. It's over.
We gave Maddox the W. We'll do the ding 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 ding. We'll do the bell ringing. We'll have a sound effect play. Editor, you have to put that in.
This round's winner, Maddox. Fatality.
Show LOWTAX getting knocked out by Uwe Boll. I learned how to pronounce it.
Uwe Boll. Stupid ass foreign people names. Expect me to know how to pronounce that.
He'll kick your ass for that, dude. He'll break your spine. Do you really want to risk that?
Yeah, you permanently disabled me like you did to LOWTAX.
But, you know, with that, maybe, you know what, guys? You know, that's the end of the episode. We have another NETLORE episode, guys. You can't say that we didn't record one anymore.
We told you so. I don't like to say I told... Wait a minute. I love to say I told you so. I told you so. There'd be another episode, and there is. And you're listening to it right now, and guess what? There's going to be even more, baby. So just stay tuned. Save NETLORE time. Save NETLORE channel.
NETLORE.
Also, scratch the part about it being the same time, but it'll be soon. We promise.